Paul McKeever is the leader of Freedom Party. Paul joined Freedom Party in 1992 and worked on the campaign of later to be party leader Lloyd Walker in 1995. Paul's first ran as a candidate for Freedom Party in Ontario 1999's election. He also became a Freedom Party spokesman that year. Paul replaced Lloyd Walker as party leader in 2002. He has led the party through the elections of 2003 and 2007, 2011. He is also chief spokesperson for the No Tax for Pan Am 2015 committee. Paul is an employment litigator by profession, and he opened his law office in Oshawa in the spring of 1997. His clients' cases have been reported in the Lawyers Weekly newspaper and on the front page of the Toronto Star. Paul wrote, produced, and directed the popular documentary, The Principle of Pot, the history of Prince of Pot Mark Emery's campaigns for individual freedom over the years 1980 to 2010. In fact, Paul has made or appeared in numerous videos that can be watched on Freedom Party of Ontario's YouTube channel, by the way, the most popular YouTube channel of all political parties in Ontario, and on his own YouTube channel. Paul's YouTube channel is more popular than that of Canada's Prime Minister and Ontario's Premier. Paul's columns have appeared in the pages of the Toronto Star and the Financial Post. He's been a guest on numerous radio and television programs, including Ryan Doyle, John Oakley, Michael Corrin, Christine Williams. He also appears on a blog. He also writes a blog, rather, concerning philosophy, politics, law, and current events. Please help me welcome Paul McKeever.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there's one thing the news and speculation about the budget of 2012 made clear, it's that we're in the middle of a political war. It's a war being fought by millions of your neighbors, but there are only two sides. As in any war, both sides only want happiness. But what the two sides think is happiness, and what they're willing to do to get it, that's where we differ. Both sides remember how it used to be. Mom took us out to buy clothes. Dad handed us a plate of food straight off the barbecue. The mom and dad maybe give you some money to buy some candy or some treats or go see a movie. They bought you a bicycle. They may have bought you a second bicycle when someone stole your first one. In an arm wrestling match with Dad, somehow you as an 8-year-old were able to win. And Mom, when she saw that finger-painted picture you made for her on Mother's Day, was awestruck that it looked just like a photograph. Every day, Mom and Dad told you you were special, you were attractive and smart, that the world was your oyster. Someone's nodding no over here, right? I'll talk to your mom later. And for the time that you were a child, a happy existence didn't require that much effort. As a child under parental care, life was pretty much heaven on earth. But as we all got older, we learned a few things. We learned that houses don't float to us on the tide. Cars don't grow on trees, and they're not fueled by rain. Chicken and beef entrees, like the ones we had tonight, don't just land on your lap. Satellites and rockets to Mars don't build themselves. Knowledge of logic and calculus and scientific knowledge doesn't enter our brains by laying on a pillow and having it go through our skin by osmosis. And while winning a foot race might win you the medal and put you on the cover of a magazine, watching a foot race won't get you any admiration at all. In short, we learn one very important thing, one unavoidable truth, that the things upon which we depend for our survival and our happiness can be obtained by us only by exerting effort, mental and physical effort. And if we don't put the effort in ourselves, we'll be miserable. We'll be in a situation where we're dependent on others to do that exertion for us. That reality presents every adult with a choice: to think or to drift mindlessly, to put in the physical and mental effort to create and foster the things that we want, or to find some way of having others exert the effort for us. Each of us must ask ourselves, will I assume the responsibilities of adulthood, or will I find ways to live as a child? In the political war that's currently being waged in Ontario, our answer to that question places us on one side of the war or on the other. It's therefore a war in which one side is comprised of individuals who embrace reality and act accordingly, and the other side is comprised of people who, hating the facts of reality, are determined to find ways to deny them, to somehow defeat Mother Nature, and to continue living life in a way in which one can get goods and services and admiration and self-esteem without having to expend any effort, the effort unavoidably involved in producing those things. We lovers of reality and life and happiness, right here on earth, stand on one side, and on the other side slouches the resenters of reality, the opponents of effortful thought and action, the something-for-nothingers, the Reds. This war was not started by we lovers of life and freedom. We can and do produce all that we need, materially and spiritually, and we don't need the Reds to help us do it. We don't want or need anything from them. But the Reds literally would suffer and possibly even die without the rest of us. Failing to accept the responsibility of producing the values they need to survive and thrive, desiring to live life on mental autopilot, the Reds depend upon the rest of us to do the thinking, to make the hard decisions, to expend the effort, and to produce for them everything their oh-so-little hearts desire. Now, we lovers of freedom are always prepared to extend charity to a stranger in distress, both gladly and inconspicuously. From time to time, when it's not undeserved, we extend such goodwill toward our fellow men, not as a duty, but as a courtesy and civility. And a responsible lover of freedom, when in distress, receives charity with thanks, with admiration for the giver, and with an intention to return the favor in time. But the Reds don't want goodwill, which is why they never extend it to strangers. And the Reds reject the very idea of charity, truth be told. A Red perceives an act of charity as an unwelcome reminder that the person given the assistance has been unable or unwilling to exert the effort that nature requires. If receiving charity, a Red feels bad, guilty, irresponsible, and incompetent to live on this earth when he accepts the charity. The charity he receives brings to his consciousness the fact that he is in distress because he did not exert himself, because he rejected nature's requirement that an adult think and produce if he is to live. It brings to the fore the pain of his own low self-esteem and the resentment of the high self-esteem of the person extending the charity to him. He resents the charitable person's goodwill. No, the Red does not want our charity. He does not want our goodwill. But he does want our material and spiritual values. To deal with his feelings of guilt and low self-esteem, he wants everyone, including himself, to believe that giving him our money, our respect, and our love and admiration is our duty. He wants an alternative reality in which he has a right to the money in other people's pockets, in which he has a right to everyone's respect, in which he has a right to be loved and to be admired. He wants an alternative reality in which money, respect, and admiration, that which we have to offer, actually belongs not to us, but to him. He wants an alternative reality in which he's not receiving unearned things for free, but is simply collecting from us what already belongs to him in the first place. In short, as an adult, he wants to live in a world in which someone else assumes the role of mommy and daddy, keeps him secure, tells him he's smart and great and deserving and admired and respected. He wants a fantasy world that will allow him to continue living the life of a child without feeling any guilt or inferiority about it. Now, nature presents the Reds with a problem. The Reds have to get everyone else, the productive and the responsible adults, to play along. And they have three options. One option is simply to take out a gun and threaten to kill those who won't hand over the loot. Some Reds go this route. However, even most Reds recognize that if they take that route, they won't exactly come away with all that self-esteem they want to have. And besides, they'd have to put down the converter and get off the couch for a while to do all those things to people. So there's the second option. The Reds can try to convince us that we are immoral, or that after we die, we will suffer an eternity of pain and anguish unless we hand over the loot pronto. That effort's been pretty successful over the centuries, but it's not perfect. Some of us producers simply are unwilling to take lessons in morality from 40-year-old children. That leaves us with option 3 for the Reds, electing other people to do the dirty work in option 1. Electing other people to make laws not for the defense of everyone's life, liberty, and property, but for the redistribution of wealth under the threat of fine and imprisonment. Electing people who will cite morality or claim that we are all in this together, just to justify perverting the function of government and changing it from a defender of the honest and effortful to a weapon used to ensure that the Reds don't have to assume the full responsibility of adulthood. Thus, we are left with the inevitable result of so many able-bodied people choosing not to engage in the thinking, choosing, and productive effort nature requires of adults. In Ontario, nobody pays doctors and hospitals for the health care they receive. Any resident of the province need only show up and say, "Make me well." Nobody pays tuition to the public schools that our children attend. Any child need simply show up and say, "Teach me." And oh, what the Reds want everyone's children to be taught in those schools. In recent years, children have been required to watch movies like Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, so that they can learn that the decision to exert oneself and engage in productive thought and action is a decision that condemns humanity to global suicide. In the name of building student self-esteem, the focus has moved from achieving grades to just showing up. Grading systems increasingly have moved towards systems that hide failure and that minimize the perception that any student is performing any better than any other one. In other words, Reds want schools that create more Reds, and they've got them. How did we get Ontario into this fantasy world of something for nothing? One need only look at the history books. Whether Liberal, NDP, or Progressive Conservative, Ontario's Red governments have continued to assume control over and responsibility for a growing percentage of all adult decisions and actions. Whether the party colors were red, orange, blue, those red parties continued to tell us what not to do, what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and etc. All three of them have increased tax rates and introduced new taxes to finance their ever-expanding parental role over an increasingly childlike and dependent population. That said, it would be a moral crime not to dispel the myth that the Progressive Conservatives have somehow been a right-wing alternative to the Reds. In point of fact, the Progressive Conservatives have been the reddest party of all. The Conservatives, not the Liberals or the NDP, introduced Ontario's biggest taxes, the provincial income tax and the retail sales tax, which is now collected as part of the HST. Dick, I didn't see you earlier. Hello. The very program that lies at the cancerous core of Ontario's budget crisis at present, the government's OHIP healthcare monopoly, was imposed upon us not by the Liberals or the NDP, but by the Progressive Conservatives in 1969. And that is no small part of the reason why, just like the Liberals and the NDP, the Progressive Conservatives are dead set against lifting the ban on private health care and life insurance and health insurance. And so we're faced not only with an alert about REDS, but with a red alert, about the growing fiscal crisis the REDS are creating in Ontario. A red alert about a Liberal budget that continues to borrow an extra $15 billion every year. A red alert that Liberals don't care about deficits or debts, because in the past, some grown-ups have always come along to pony up the cash and save the day. One doesn't have to look too far to see that the NDP is similarly deluded. Just consider its budget proposals of eating the rich, or I think they call it taxing those who are making more money, but eating the rich. And the Progressive Conservative official opposition, well, declaring that they would vote against the budget even before they knew what was in it, they made it obvious that the content of the budget is not relevant to them. They aren't really opposing anything in the budget. Being the very party that introduced the taxing and spending measures that are crippling us financially, they do not actually oppose those programs. Their objection to the budget is not an opposition to the Reds. It's the ultimate expression of being Red. The desire not only to have a fantasy world in which everything comes to one without earning it, but to have a world in which Progressive Conservatives are praised and admired by the Reds to whom they deliver the goods. At the expense of the productive, rational, effortful adults, the Progressive Conservatives want to feel proud and to be highly admired and respected by Reds for delivering the Reds from the facts of reality. In short, they want to be highly honored philanthropists with other people's money. The fact that all of the political parties in our legislature are Red implies something else that's very important about this war that we're in. The one place in which there is no war is the Ontario legislature. The legislature is in fact an armory for the Reds. And if we, the victims of those who reject reality, who reject reason, who reject effort, and who reject responsibility, if we victims of the Reds want there to be a change, we must at all times be ready to lead the war into the legislature. We must not merely oppose a Red budget. We must propose a budget for rational, responsible adults, as only Freedom Party has with its 2012 official opposition budget. And it is not enough to condemn Liberal Reds only to find ourselves stuck with Progressive Conservative ones. We must oppose all Reds, but more importantly, we must advocate government that refuses to continue the fantasy of effortless existence. A government that champions the existence of the facts of adult existence. A government that champions the choice to think and act, and a government that champions freedom itself. Now, I know there are some who desperately want freedom, but who worry that it just might be a lost cause. Who feel there's no point in putting their name on the ballot because, well, they won't win a seat. Who feel there's no point in helping a candidate to collect signatures, raise funds, or pound signs into the ground. A waste of money and time, they tell themselves. There are those who would love to see a Freedom Party win seats and form a government, but who, not yet having seen a win, turn their back on the party. There are those who decide that they will support Progressive Conservatives, not because they particularly are enamored with them, but because they sometimes talk about lowering a tax by a percentage or two. Better that than nothing, they figure. But it's not better than nothing. In fact, it's quite a bit worse than nothing. Like cars and houses and rocket ships, freedom doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't float in with the tide. It doesn't create itself. Just as one must accept reality and constantly decide to engage in mental and physical exertion to create cars and houses and rocket ships, one must constantly decide to exert mental and physical effort to create and maintain a force for freedom. And when one gives up, when one decides against exerting that effort, one does far worse than merely give up on the effort to oppose the Reds. By deciding no longer to think, to act, and to accept the fact that gaining and keeping freedom requires not only eternal vigilance, but eternal effort, one actually becomes a Red. You see, being a Red isn't about whether or not you want freedom. The man who wants freedom to be delivered to him effortlessly, is just another red. He wants something for nothing. No, being red isn't about whether or not you want freedom. Being a red is about whether or not you make the decision every day to commit the mental and physical effort that creates and maintains freedom. So I'm urging everybody here, and I don't think it's that hard to sell in this room, but this will be watched by people on video and on the internet, and so I'll talk mostly to them. Don't become a red for freedom. Don't merely wish you had freedom. Don't pity yourself. And certainly don't try to excuse yourself from the responsibility of expending effort to achieve freedom by embracing pessimism and telling yourself that freedom cannot be achieved. And whenever you feel that doubt or self-pity or laziness creeping in, redouble your efforts. Do a bit more. Contribute more. Make your commitment to your freedom as high a priority as your commitment to putting a roof over your head or a meal on your plate. Because I assure you all, if you do not make that commitment, the effort you spend on earning homes and cars and happiness will be wasted. Because without freedom, without the defense of your life, your liberty, and your property, the Reds won't let you keep those things for long. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.